I will give everybody a moment to pop in. It's about 20 to 8. Everybody may be watching other channels, but I wanted to take a moment and attempt to discuss this LEISEK case, which everyone seems to be absolutely going crazy over right now. Which doesn't mean it's actually really worth talking about at this time, but it seems like everyone is highly emotional, and I kind of played a small little prank on you yesterday in parting. Not a prank, a lesson. And I wanted to get back with you all to talk to you about that. Hi, music. Sitting here trying to get a couple of small things done, waiting for people to file in. We're going to talk about this LEISEK scenario. LEISEK, however you say it. I guess LEISEK. But it is certainly the story that everyone is talking about. And Buddy, it's a story that they have made some really... It's a story that they've made some really horrendous titles for. I mean, you know, I understand people get upset and stuff when these things happen, but boy, they have really created some titles for some of this stuff going on, ain't they? Yeah, it's very difficult to read about it. Imagine being an officer that basically all you do, or at least 1 out of every 6 cases you handle, is a case like this that is basically nothing but learning about a generational issue that was finally caught. And you know, by the time the court scenario is done, because you do the pre-sentence investigation for the court, you know everything. And the only person that you make that report for is the judge, and the judge and the clerk dispense it for discovery. It's horrible. Hi, Amanda. But everybody is really going like super, they're going super hard on it right now. And it is kind of, I know this sounds horrible, it's kind of the new drug on YouTube. I know it sounds bad, but it's kind of the new drug on YouTube. And so I just wanted to discuss it mostly because of its emotional impact on people, but also because it's being kind of put everywhere, and we just need to talk about it. Yeah, music. Yeah, there's so many sides to that you should see something like this from. And honestly, if you truly think about the entire environment that everyone was raised in, you will be stuck not knowing where. Like most people are stuck on hate. But if you truly read about families that have had this going on, and you listen to their stories, you honestly, you get stuck not knowing if you are upset, repulsed, sorry, have a broken heart. There's so many emotions around it that you never quite know where you land. Oh, it's very common, and it's more common that it never sees the light of day, to be quite honest. It's more common that it is never spoken about, because sad to say, in many areas and in many mindsets, it is still a very normal thing. And I mean, let that kind of hit you for a minute. And, people want to use the shock and awe of it, but sometimes always discussing the shock and awe of it is more hurtful to those out there who are wondering, should I take my story to the cops? Should I? Because most of the people that are being abused are very terrified of the consequences for them and their attacker. They are, it's kind of like Stockholm Syndrome. I mean, they know it's wrong, but they also grow up in it. So epigenetically, they don't understand why it's wrong many times. They just know that they have this repulsion toward the physical action of what's going on that they're being forced to be part of. So it's one of those very difficult to maneuver kind of areas for people. And so you get stuck not knowing really how to feel. Hi, Gypsy. Yeah, and if you really look at the problem and you trace the amount of adults, people, and people that have chosen to stay silent, or people that have coerced victims into silence, honestly, by the time you get done, especially if a kid's gone through school, or I mean, there's a whole bunch of people, in the village, so to say, that could have possibly changed that child's life. So, hi, China. Boring night at work. Well, maybe try to take it as a mental break. I always try to tell David that. Thank you, Oscar. You have to eat your dinner and drink your water right now. Thank you. Don't love my dog. I mean, he's nothing if not punctual and consistent. So I guess I need to preface this, since we've got a few in here now. I need to preface this by saying, no matter what I say during this video, I can in no way justify the behaviors that are noted in the allegations. You cannot in any way approve of any kind of abuse. There's no way to justify it. And even if someone were to turn over a new leaf, become a new person, and try to create a new life, you still must be responsible for whatever you've done prior, and you have to be held accountable for any breaches against the law and against others that you may be responsible for. So in no way, when I'm speaking about this and everything that we're going to kind of mesh up and cover, I have no notes. I never have notes. I do have my iPad here because I have copies of the emails, but I have no notes for me to speak on. I just kind of go with the flow. But you can't justify the behavior. You can never justify the behavior. You have to give a lot of grace to the victim, because they're brave enough to come out, even if sometimes the way they project seems a bit off kilter or a bit driven in odd ways. You have to protect the victim, because something finally happened that allowed the information to come out, and it needs to come out. And because they need to get to a place where they can heal, and they need to get to a place where it's behind them instead of staring them in the face every day. So the victims, you got to be behind, you got to support them. You can't say any of this is right. But what you can do is look at the bigger picture, and there are probably a million different ways to look at this, and you can kind of look for motivation and ego and coercion and gaslighting, and you can kind of get a feel for the environment that someone may have been in. Now, first thing I guess I need to say, for anyone that has never seen me before that may trickle upon this, I am a retired parole officer and counselor, and I did used to supervise sex offenders. So this is nothing new to me. This is something that I did in my career. I also did precedence investigations for the report on these events. Wow, your eyes so pretty. My eyes are probably still crossed because I'm trying to get used to new glasses, and I cannot make them work. They are very wonky right now. You can suffer that. Well, I've been married for 20 years. You're a little late on that one. But you have to understand that I was in this world, steeped in this world. And so I may seem a little bit cold and callous and aloof compared to some of y'all, but it's because I learned how to deal with it for a decade. And I was in it so deep, I had to learn how to not be super emotional and how to handle my emotions so that I could supervise these individuals. And even though I had to, hold justice on top of their head, like, with my thumb, I also had to have compassion for the person that was actually trying to work on themselves and create a better life. I also needed to keep them employed and, legitimate via the state so that they could remain employed so that they could pay their restitutions to their victim or victims. So it was a big deal to keep these guys employed, but keep the community safe, keep your eyes on them at all times, but keep that money coming in for the restitution. Plus they had to pay for therapy, lie detectors annually, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So they have a very difficult supervision plan. And most of the ones that I supervised were community supervision for life. So they were not going to get off anytime soon. Yeah, music, that's going to play a big deal in this. Thank you for pointing that out. So I do have, quite a bit of knowledge in this area, but courts and judges and district attorneys and state prosecutors and really good defense attorneys, they will, all the gavel is slapped. Basically, we all have to say these are just allegations, and at this time, Jared is not guilty of anything, barring the damning emails and everything else. He's not guilty of anything per the court system yet. And we all have to kind of wait for that. Now, I'll ask Jens a question because last night when I left Jens with a very triggering prompt, and I did it on purpose. I said, hey, I know this story has come out, but if y'all just would not make your mind up on it just yet and just wait for a little bit more information, I'd appreciate it. Just hang on before you really make your mind up. Does anybody remember me saying that? We'll talk about it tomorrow. It's going to be a big topic, but just hang on. There's always more to know, and you got to have all these different insights, and we'll talk about it tomorrow before you make your mind up. I said that yesterday before I got off my live stream, and I said it for a very purpose reason. Does anybody remember the response that they felt when I said that? Because what I was trying to do was to see if anybody out there that was listening to me heard me say that and went, oh, she's going to stand up for him. She's going to defend him. I can't believe someone defends such a thing as that. I can't believe. Did anyone have that response? It's okay, because I was actually trying to push us toward that response. Okay. Okay, that's what I was trying to do. I'm trying to do some gluing and stuff while I'm doing this. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to show you that no matter what the court says, you already have an emotional bias. And we all do. Well, most of us all do. And I have one kind of, but I have less of one than most people because of my time in the court and dealing with this. I know that there's a lot of gray matter that's got to be sifted through before this can really be done. And for the victim and the offender, it's not ever going to be done. No matter what closure this may begin for the victim, it's never going to be done. It's a necessary process, but it's not a very healing one. It's just not. And a lot of people don't understand that. So I was trying to see who might be honest enough to say, yes, I got mad. I got irritated. It made me emotional. Okay, that is your sign to be careful when processing all this information about this story. Because if you are easily triggered, I'll get to that in a minute, China, because confessing and word choice are very separate things. If you are easily triggered, you need to be careful. because a lot of people are choosing to put out stuff. They're choosing to put out the emails, but there's still a lot. I'm trying to get my ribbon. There's still a lot withheld in those emails. And I dare say that as he composed those emails, he knew exactly what he was doing, because I dare say he had someone coaching him as to how to behave and what to say and how to present his form of information, his side of the information. So number one, a lot of people want to know, a lot of people are like, this has ruined Adventures with Purpose for me. Okay. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, this is just one man and one man's potential transgressions. And while the other men may have had an idea, may have known, may have, you know, he at the time had no charges against him and had no conviction. So whatever you're feeling, you know, there was no proof, no validity. They may have heard rumors. You know, we can't damn everyone else because of the acts of one. You know, if you've got one goat that gets out of the fence, you don't slaughter all your goats to get the, you know, get the one out of your fence all the time. It just doesn't make sense to do that. So we have to make sure that we are not trying to damn everyone else based on the behavior of one. Adventures with Purpose has done remarkable things for families that in any other way would not have been able to recover their loved ones. And I think it's very important that while we can certainly hold a very skeptical eye on Mr. LEISEK right now, pending the court stuff, we certainly cannot say that anything that he did via Adventures with Purpose and recovering bodies and stuff like that, we can't say that anything he did there is undone. Those were still good things that were accomplished. Those were still positive things for families. And, you know, bad people can do good things. That's the gray area in life. Bad people do good things all the time. Sometimes by design and sometimes out of just rush trigger moments, and sometimes because they're trying to seek some kind of retribution or repentance. But bad people do good things all of the time. And while that doesn't probably make anybody feel any better, we have to remember not to apply a blanket hate for one person's ignorance. Because I will say that regardless whether he's found guilty or not, it is ignorance for a grown man to have behaved in this way. Even with just the emails I'm reading, it's ignorance for a grown man to behave in this way. Whether he's guilty of the acts or not, and that I'm still going to call that ignorance. Yeah, we have to, you know, there are a lot of gray spaces in life that we can't really understand when we're going through them, that eventually somehow we go, oh, that's what that was about. And we finally see them for, you know, what they were meant to be or what they were meant to do in someone's life. So, you know, while he has done some questionable things, it may be, you know, that we need to learn how to not apply blanket hate. This is one thing as a nation that we suck at, because we like to apply blanket hate over everyone. And we just want to jump to conclusions and you know, create contradictions. And, you know, like all of the titles they're putting on all of these videos now, they are meant to drive you emotionally, not to spread information. They're meant to drive you emotionally and get someone else money. So while, yes, I think it's horrible and atrocious for a grown man to seek any kind of physical satisfaction with a child, it's the most heinous crime I think that ever can be committed. I also think it's atrocious for people to make money off of telling someone else's story that contains such private information. I also think it's deplorable to ask victims onto podcast and YouTube live streams before they have been contacted by an attorney, given their deposition, been cross-referenced and questioned on the stand, and had a gavel slapped on their case, because you could really screw up what they're fixing to try to lay down in court if you have them say the wrong thing or you pull them into the wrong type of discussion. So YouTubers, be aware. You may be doing more harm than good when you think you're reaching out to these victims. they're victims, and they're going to be very easily swayed to tell their story because they've got this new breath of guts and glory and bravado and bravery, and thank God they have. But don't milk it for your personal gain. Don't milk it for your personal gain. It could potentially screw up their court case if you have them sway from certain things that they don't need to be saying, and oops, they say it. Well, you could have ruined their entire court case, their entire allegations, and it could not end well for the victim. So please respect the victim and their right to privacy pending the court case. Their attorneys and themselves, and hopefully a mental health professional, have quite a road ahead of them, and they certainly do not need to be tripped up by someone just wanting a few clicks and maybe a few AdSense revenue. I think he was close, music. He was close, but he was choosing not to be on video a lot. So, I think what these originally, per the court documents and the emails, these originally came out, the communications originally started in February. So all of this tumultuous emotional crap started for AWP and Mr. LEISEK and the victims. It came to a head in February when the emails started flying back and forth. So I do remember several times Jared would make comments about his previous life, that he had left the country, that as a child he was prompted to run away. And I picked up on the fact that there was probably trauma in his background very quickly. You could just see it from, well, I guess if you've got my education, you can just see it. But you could just see it from the way he holds his body when he talks about those subject matters, to the word choice that he uses, and to the way that he tries to then self-correct when he changes, profiles in his brain from victim to now I'm this owner of this organization doing great things. And so I could tell that he had some, what's the best way? I could tell he had some disassociation, but I didn't know if it was because he was, completely disassociating, or he was just trying to stay on a new path and let the old be the old. And that's something that you have to go through a lot of time with a client and figure out. I think that maybe this story is being used in a manner to reduce some of the information we may be getting on that case, but I can't for sure say that. But it seems awfully odd timing, and it seems rather strange with some of the feedback and the quips that were made by the family, and some of the strange behavior of the family and everyone that were not so happy to get Kylie back from them and stating that they were not heroes. I don't care if it's a drunk donkey with 3 legs that hobbles into a pond and pulls my perished child out. I'm going to treat that 3-legged jackass nice, because that was my baby. So for me, that back and forth was like, there's something not right here. And so for me, it felt more like a power play than anyone was truly emotional or distraught. And I think what it may be is actually a power play. Because in my professional view of dealing, with all these different types of criminals and violent offenders and murderers and all these other offenders, it looked like they were genuinely unhappy to have any knowledge of what happened to her. And the memorial service did not touch the normal grief markers that are kind of primary stepping stones for people that are going through these things. And some of the wording, phrasing, and behaviors were just off for me. Now, that's just me personal. I can't answer for you. You can interpret it however you feel you need to, but that's just for me personally. So I think this may be more of a power play than anything. But regardless if it's a power play, if they're trying to use it to hush things on a case or whatever, we know now that it originally started back in February. And no matter how it was used or how it is being used or how it may be being used, it's still wrong. It's still wrong. So we have to address it. I don't know, because he was apparently there for some of the interviews with some of the locals. So I can't, I nobody had him low jack, so I don't know exactly where he was. But in some of the discussions, he made it seem as though he was helping to interview some of the locals, because he interjects himself that he was there and was part of the questioning process with like the roadside assistance guy and some other people. So maybe we'll find that all out at some point. Oh, JoJo, I don't know if they're really wise. People may be mad at me after this because I'm not going to have like the super emotional response that most people's having. And it's just because I worked in the field for a long time and supervised these people. And it's just, it's not going to hit me like it's going to hit everyone else, because I've already had to deal with those emotions and, 5,000 times over, and I've already processed that. So this is deplorable. It's horrible behavior, the worst behavior I think anyone can exhibit. But I also want you to understand that at the same time, you have to be super careful about how you're being pulled by your emotions, because people will be using your emotions against you. And I just want you to be very aware of that. So, yes, I think it's deplorable, but I also think it's deplorable how people on YouTube are already trying to get the victims to speak and make a buck off of that and break a story. And what really needs to be done is everybody needs to be quiet, allow these victims to sit with their teams, go over the information, plan out their prosecution, and let them get through everything before you trip them up and make them say something that a criminal defense attorney can use. Because I've seen it happen. So I just think it's really just inappropriate. And, these victims who have just, got this newfound chutzpah to, share their story, they don't understand that, because they're in a heightened emotional kind of adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin, woo, they're going, full tilt right now, because they've got this newfound bravery and freedom. And so they're not really reining it back right now. And so I just don't want them to be taken advantage of. That's my big thing. You have to be careful of the platform that you seek when you're talking about abuse before a criminal proceeding. It's just, you got to. Because that criminal defense attorney is going to tear everything apart. And he should. That's his job. So let's talk about this. So when I heard, I was like, oh, man. Okay, because if you've watched me for very long, I think I may have even said it again at the beginning of the Kylie Rodney case. I said, yeah, I've watched Adventures with Purpose. My husband really likes them. My husband used to be on the rescue squad and do a lot of recovery stuff. And so there for a long while, we were actually members just to give a little bit of money to the page for what they did, because Dave used to be a first responder, a rescue squad member, and all that good stuff. So he kind of knows what they have to deal with, and he liked their videos and stuff. I liked the videos better when Sam the Adventure Man was there. I liked Sam. Sam seemed to have a very even keel temperament, and if like he was a gelding, he would be the perfect horse. He was like laid back, easy going, never got excited, was always there, was always responsible and accountable and ready to go for the team, but also ask questions and challenge things. And I really liked Sam. And then all of a sudden Sam left, and I went, oh, and it was a bad break. And I went, oh, I wonder what happened there. Of course, Sam said nothing. I'm sure, he got, the riot act read to him if he would have said anything. I wonder now if potentially Sam leaving, go look at the timing. I wonder now potentially if Sam leaving was because of all of that. Makes me wonder. Because Sam does seem kind of like the man that would be like, I can't be part of this at all now. Peace, And I respect that. I respect that at all. I respect that completely. But I also respect the guys that said, hey, yeah, he may be fixing to go through a lot, but we're doing really great things for these families, and we need to try to continue doing really great things. So I can respect both sides, but I wonder now if the reason Sam left was not mixed in with this, because Sam split real quick, and it was really odd, and he never spoke about it, but you could see on his face something was troubling him. So now it makes me wonder. I have no confirmation. That's just internally my gut feeling, but maybe one day we'll find out. Who knows? So if you didn't know that Sam was once with them, go on YouTube to Sam the Adventure Man, give him a follow and a like. Great guy. I really like the guy. So that was my first question. My second question was, I needed more information. Where's the information? So I start looking for court documents, and I find them. So in the court documents, it puts the ages at 9 and 16. And then I think it continued to 10 and 17. And it may have, there may be more, but that's all that I read in what I saw. Which means they were both juveniles. Yes, he was right on the edge. Potentially a court, pending the circumstances that victims may come forward to, could choose to request the judge try him as an adult. It would be up to the judge, and it would be per the information obtained in the allegations in the indictment. So, you know, this could get worse for Mr. LEISEK. Could potentially get much worse for Mr. LEISEK. If he goes to court and he is found guilty of just what is currently on the paperwork, given his back history and previous criminal endeavors, he will not be given any kind of diversion options. He will not be given any kind of pure probationary, you know, because sometimes they'll do that if you've never been in trouble, you know, even if you have heinous crimes, sometimes they'll do that. I don't see him getting out of this without jail time and a pretty good amount of jail time, and then a supervised option that's going to most likely be community lifetime supervision, where he'll be registering. He'll be locked into a state into a county without travel permits from a judge, checking in with other police forces when he travels, being GPSed for at least 9 months. You know, he's got a lot ahead of him. He'll be going to therapy and doing individual counseling, taking lie detector tests, and his new job will be taking care of the supervision to address the issues that got him there. It is a lot of work. So, and I never disrespect the guys that are on supervision that do the work, but I also will say I've never seen a true case of rehabilitation in this area, which also troubles my mind because it makes me then concerned, is there more to come? Now, I think since yesterday or the day before, there's been another victim come up. I think now it's a cousin and a sister. I can't verify that. I only have seen the emails between the cousin and Mr. LEISEK, but it seems like they kept bumping into each other, and this is why it came to a head. Will Missy let him cook dinner tomorrow night? So what we're looking at right now is just the cousin who has gone to police and charges have been pressed for the cousin. The emails. Now, the emails to me, were really difficult to hear because I wanted to hear more. I wanted to hear more apology in the tones from Jared, and I didn't. And you know, this is pretty significant because whatever information and probable cause they had for the charges, they did land on a first-degree felony. So this is a big deal. But I wanted to hear more out of Jared than key phrases, and I didn't want him to sound so therapist, you know, because I wanted to kind of see some soul bearing and grit laid out, and some heartstrings laid out, you know, because this is a very big deal, and I didn't feel that. But it's just, you know, AWP is now getting messages on their platform. So people are attacking the whole agency per this one man. Guys, chill. I know this is heinous and horrible, but we can't turn into the mob with pitchforks and fire. We have to allow the court system to work and for the victim to seek the justice that they deserve, and we can't muddy the waters and create more of an issue and potentially sidetrack the victim's justice and her start of a healing process because we want to be emotional about something that didn't even happen to us. It's much better to sit back and go, I'm going to follow this through court. I'm going to reserve judgment as I get the information. And I'm going to try not to react emotionally, even though this is highly emotional. I'm going to prepare myself to understand that I may have to walk away from this from time to time because it may be hard for me to read or hear. And should I feel emotional and want to do a big, long, wordy response, I may need to walk away for 24 hours before I respond to people online. That's just probably a good key phrase, just to kind of think about as you go through and learn about this case. So there's no need to be attacking AWP over one man. There's no need to try to discredit a whole organization from one man. What we need to do is to chill out, to stop having the victims go and talk all over the internet, because that could potentially harm their case. They could potentially say something that a defense attorney could use and tear them apart with. Stop doing it. Don't muddy the waters for the victims. I know that they're wanting to talk, but there are certain people they need to talk to right now and certain people they don't need to talk to right now. I also hope profoundly that they are working in close contact with a mental health professional as they go through this journey for justice, because it's a very traumatizing event to get justice when you are a victim. The cats are coming to the kitchen window because they hear me. Hi, Cindy. So let's look at one of the first things that Jared said in an email response back. Now, this is allegedly his email response. I think he's pretty much admitted everything and put out a page, but just to cover my butt, I can't concretely state that he did sit down and physically write this. Jojo, I just don't get super worked up. I've dealt with murders and all these other people, and it's like, bad, crappy things happen. There's an underbelly to society that a lot of people don't know about, and I wish I didn't know about it. Boy, life was a lot better before I knew about it, but now that I know about it, I can either allow it to control me, or I can put it back in my little well of wisdom, and I can use it to navigate the world more effectively. That's what I choose to do, because I'm not a super irrational woman. I'm like, all right, noted. I'll put that one in my pocket for later. That's kind of how I am. I was a mean parole officer at times. I was really sweet most of the time, but boy, if you did me dirty and I had to write a warrant, that warrant was going to be full. You were going to make me do 8 pieces of paper. They were going to be dandies. So that was just kind of how I worked. But he says, the first time that I apologized to you, I'm sorry for the way it was handled, for I was under the impression that our mother knew and that I felt it was appropriate at the time. Oh, that your mother knew, and I felt that it was appropriate at the time to have the conversation with both of you. Already I've got a red flag. He thought the mother knew, which means other adults had knowledge of this behavior in apparently this group of cousins and children and siblings, and chose to do nothing, or chose to have minimal influence to stop it. So already we know this has turned into, I'm lagging, YouTube hates me. Already we know this is turning into a generational issue, which if you see someone at a young age, at a prepubescent, pubescent, pre-adult, if they start doing certain behaviors, you can almost always guarantee that it is something that is generational, that they were a victim as well, and at one time, and that they are repeating what was done to them. And a lot of people say, how can he do that to someone else if he had been a victim himself and knew how horrible being a victim was? Epigenetics are a bitch. If you are raised in an environment to where boundaries are not taught, and you see a lot of things you shouldn't see, even though you have outside influence and you have an internal gut feeling, you don't have that real steady compass of this is not right. You have a lot of questions. You have a lot of I don't knows. I have no guidance. I have no role models except for potentially very negative ones. So then what happens when biology really amps up the testosterone and the hormones? Stupid things that require parental supervision to maintain space and, correct behavior. And I don't believe that these children had that. So we already know this is a generational issue. So yes, we're very upset with Mr. LEISEK because he states that he was involved in a very horrible, inappropriate physical contact with family members. But just from this first couple of sentences, I can already tell you, looks like he was a victim too at one point, and that this is a generational issue. Doesn't erase what he did. He still needs to be held accountable for what he did. But it tells me that there's more to the story, more people that should have been held accountable. And how far does this actually go back? And how entrenched and indoctrinated are these children? So there should be like a whole bunch of DCS workers being called in to investigate this family right now. But they need to be looking at every branch of this family tree right now. This should be like the biggest spotlight red flag for any children's agency anywhere. So they need to be investigated immediately. There needs to be professionals on the scene. The second time that I tried was not to clear my own conscience, but to help you heal. Now, do we think that he was bringing this up to help her heal? I would hope that someone who was acknowledging that he was creating a victim mentality and a victim path for someone, I hope that if he brought it up, he was attempting to talk about it. I hope he was attempting to make some kind of amends. I think it was silly and juvenile of him to think that simply talking about it would resolve any physical pain. Doesn't make sense. But then again, people that have harmed people always learn how to minimize their own behaviors, but normally because they've had to minimize something that's also been done to them. So it's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg. And it's kind of like if you see the steam engine, there's a caboose somewhere too. There are more, there are more cars to this train than we probably want to admit to. And these are just the first few indicators that tell me this is a generational issue. The family needs to be looked into. And I hope that the trail does not go much deeper, but I fear that by the time we may get all the information, we may be quite enlightened in a very bad way. You essentially told me to go F myself and told me how I'd embarrassed you the first time around. I'm sorry. That's him trying to say, here's my out. You told me to leave. I left. So peace out. I'm not accountable anymore. No, you are accountable. You're always accountable. You hurt somebody. You physically assaulted somebody in the most heinous way possible. So you're always responsible, and no amount of anger or any words they say can undo that or give you a golden ticket out of the scenario. So stop saying that. It don't work. My understanding, this is a power hierarchy. My understanding is that other cousins, now I have friends that are on my level, have also tried to have the same conversation with you. Now we're pinpointing and putting that victim in the cone of shame and saying there are multiple of me and only one of you. Not cool. Not cool. So this tells me he still does have some guilt and shame and fear about what could potentially occur if this gets out. So this is still a control mechanism in communication. I'm not for that. I don't like that. We are all now adults, and it is healthy for us to acknowledge and address those unfortunate circumstances from our past. No, because you've attempted to, but when it doesn't go your way, then you stifle her, threaten her with other people, and put the cone of shame on her to push her back. So you can't then say, I'm trying to do this when you just tried to undo it in the last paragraph. So I don't believe that he thinks that it's healthy to talk about it all. It's healthy only if you talk about it in the way that he wants to talk about it. And that is normal, like power hierarchy for a victim and their aggressor. And that very rarely changes. And it also is a learned behavior, just like the abuse is a learned behavior. So it's probably something that's also been done to him. Yes, I'm reading the screenshots of the emails. So, there's a lot of power struggle in the, and there's a lot of passive aggressive tonnage in Mr. LEISEK's emails that I don't like. I don't like, because I heard that a lot in my old job. And every time I hear someone condescendingly trying to calm someone down who should be mad, I'm kind of like, greasy. And that's just how I feel. I just feel dirty when I hear that, because I know normally what it indicates in the realm that, when I used to supervise sex offenders. He says, well, there is a lot of shit that has happened throughout my own life personally from molestation, abandonment, growing up in foster care. And here's all his excuses. He now lays out his excuses. This is more of a, let me lay out the best portrayal of myself because I know you're going to bring these things to court. This is prepared. This is a, let me present the best side of me. Growing up in foster care or any other shit along the way, I would not change a thing, for it has made me who I am today. I don't know who helped you with those emails. That was a bad line. Because as happy as you are to be the person you are today, there are certain behaviors that people would always choose to take back. And those are normally when we harm other people, we hurt other people, you know, we abuse someone who has a trusting heart. We all have indiscretions in our past. And I would hope certainly if you had done something so violent as alleged that you would absolutely want to take that back. Because I cannot think of one thing that you could not have accomplished just knowing that these things occur in the world without having to do it yourself to someone to figure out that it occurs in the world, you know? So it's just kind of like, you know, no, it's not a good Miss America speech. You do not get the crown. It ain't happening. I cannot apologize for others for anything that has happened to you in your life. Well, that's true. He can't apologize for anyone else. He's not doing a very good job of apologizing for himself. He's going through the motions and he's saying a lot of things that will read well in court or can be used great with an attorney, but he's not really apologizing. Hi, Marty. We're covering the LEISEK stuff. But I've done my best to acknowledge directly with you my own mistakes. Yes, but directly with her is not the appropriate recourse for this type of violation. So, moot point. You cannot fix a violent criminal offense with a tiny emotional band-aid. And so I think that as much as whoever helped him with this and himself think this was a great email that's going to be read and be structured well in court, it's going to give a defense attorney a whole heck of a lot of fun, or a prosecuting attorney a whole heck of a lot of fun, because it really reads as a what not to do in court, says the woman that sat in court for 10 years and supervised people that did these horrible actions to people. I hold no secrets as to this with my own parents, with grandma and grandpa. Now we're seeing the generational thing, the red flag again, with your mother, red flag, aunt, whoever, and my own wife and my children. My God, why would you talk to your children about your own transgressions? How about we talk to children about that topic, make sure they're safe, but we don't add a complex onto our children by stating, oh, by the way, your dad is a potential offender. Because then these kids are going to feel guilt-tripped and shamed because they're going to grow up and eventually know, oh my God, if somebody told my dad, I would lose my dad. That puts your child in a whole world that they don't need to be in. Why would you do that? My only thought is it made him feel better, which is a sucky answer, but that's my only thought as to why he may have done that. No, we don't put our emotional transgressions on our children's heads. You make them feel safe and protected until absolutely you would have to say, oh, you know, I did something horrible when I was a kid and I'm fixing to get caught for it and I'm going to have to go to the pokey and y'all are going to be without me for a while. But you know something? I have to do my time for this. This is something I did and it's something I'm going to have to answer for. And, you know, and that's how it should have been handled, not to put this weight on these children as children. Plus, what else that makes them have to think about and become comfortable with? And there are certain topics you do not want your children comfortable with. You know. And I always try to be honest with y'all. Do the LEISEK and whatever that last name is, lineage, red flag, generational, or do we pinpoint it to Mormonism? Red flag, that's a big one, okay? Sadly, this religion it's like every religion. It has its good and its bad and it's ugly. And sadly, this one has a lot of ugly. It has a lot of bad stories, takes, and documentaries and tales and criminal offenses that do circle this topic. and spin around the drain for decades and decades and decades. So this is another red flag for me. There's no way for me to understand the hatred and resentment that you must have for me over 3 decades later. He's adding space from the crime, trying to emotionally distance him from the repercussions and make anyone who reads this in court go, 3 decades, my God. Okay, and then they're going to think, why do we have to punish him 3 decades later? My God, well, we don't know what he's done in 3 decades, and we don't know that the repentant man that's trying to make this very ill reading email sound really good, but it's really passive aggressive and ill reading. We don't know what else has occurred. So there's a big open question there. Music says, I want to know what people think about how they feel about Playboy or Elvis or Jerry Lee Lewis and all that. Yeah. I mean, and they were like in the middle of it, but and did horrible things, but were protected because they had a certain status. And I think it's silly who we choose to jump on and who we choose not to. It boggles my mind because every human being is a human being, and if it's illegal, it's illegal, and repercussions are repercussions, and the whole power play and celebrity status and financial and social media and you're canceled, and it's getting out of hand because we're becoming very inconsistent, bobble-headed idiots. As in the words of Christina Aguilera, wah, 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 wah. So I'll never, ever quote her again, but that was a really good song. He goes on to say, I heard about your driving into the cemetery a few weeks later. Trust me, had I known that you had a desire to be there and that I was the only reason keeping you away, I would have 100% given up my time to do what I could to avoid the ceremony. This is him saying, oh, if I'd known you wanted to be at the funeral, I would have been there. Okay. It's a family event. And per your own words, your family has quite the history. You knew there was going to be some uncomfortable stares. If I ever did anything to a family member to make them uncomfortable and thought that going to a funeral and my presence at a funeral would take away from the grieving and the processing and the healing that was taking place, I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go at all. I'd be like, they can think I'm another horrible person for another reason now, but I'm not going to go and interject myself in that and make it not about what it should be about. So this is just him another way trying to say, let me put my resume of my good deeds. It is your decision or your choice if you ever want to accept my apology. It is, but you telling her that doesn't matter. It's like, why'd you write that sentence? I made peace in my life with all things bad, including the situation. This tells me that for whatever reason, he has been able to justify his behavior. To me, that's dangerous because I don't think anyone that truly reflects and tries to change for the right reasons will ever make peace with something this bad. I think there will always be a little black spot that just absolutely wears upon their soul, and that they will always feel ashamed and just horrible about, even if they don't show it. And that's why it's very hard to get statements from these offenders after they go through court and they're going in their therapy and stuff. It's very hard to get any kind of statements from them because no matter what they say or what the therapist may want them to hear to move forward, a lot of them say, I will never find a place where I don't feel bad about what I've done. So for him to just write it right out, it kind of makes me go, red flag. We've justified and normalized the behavior, and we're still not treating it as delicately and as seriously as we should. Now this is what really struck me, and I'm not going to cover all the emails in full, but when she responded, she said, if you truly want to apologize, then pay for your actions. Walk into a police station with me and confess your actions. Get it on record and have yourself registered as the sex offender that you are. My only regret in life is not being as open about you as I am now. This completely says he is still in a power position over her, because she still thinks that to have any kind of justice, he has to make the first move. This tells me that there's still an imbalance of power that is being perpetuated in some level there. So there's still some kind of active abuse, whether it's just him pushing reminders about what he's capable of, or what may happen, or what scare her with what may happen to her, or scare her with the other cousins. There's still a level of pressure being applied to her that is inappropriate. So that's because she should be the one that knows she's in power, because she can go to any law enforcement agency and file a report. And I think she finally figured that out, which is why she did. But this was red flags to me that she did not understand the dynamic, because she was still in the flipped power dynamic where he had the power. Now she doesn't understand how he can sympathize and just kind of skein over the past issues, and a lot of people don't either. This is where I have to take another step back and understand that this is most likely generational, and if it is, then he has also been a victim. So while she has been victimized, she has never victimized someone else. So she sees one viewpoint. He has victimized someone else, but also been victimized. So he sees two different viewpoints. So he has a more complex view of this narrative than she does. While both of them are still horrible and both of them are still painful, you can understand where he may be more entrenched to see this from a groomed position, or from someone who has molded him and trained him, or from him adopting, mimicking, and using these learned behaviors to portray, play, and then victimize someone else. I don't think there's some narcissistic tendencies here. I don't think he's as narcissistic as he is trying to talk it away. And trying to say, I'm more of a victim than an aggressor. And I don't think, to me, that's a moot point. That's a moot point. The moment that you physically cause bodily harm to someone else, you've crossed a line that is pretty far down the track, and one that you can't really take back. So to me, it's a moot point. But I can understand how she does not understand what all he's dealing with, and I can understand how he doesn't understand what she's dealing with, and that's why neither of them can see each other's plight, pain, or attempt to resolve this, however inappropriate it may seem to everyone else. These are two people struggling in different ways, on different paths, and with different power components. And we can certainly see that one is very much more self-assured in the way that he's handling it, and one is not. And we can see that, we can see that power hierarchy that's tipping, the teeter-totter is definitely in his favor. But when you take a step back, you can see how both of them have a very misconstrued view of every possible scenario, because they both have different levels of entrenchment in this world. So, I'm glad that she knows now she has the power, and that she should have filed that, a long time ago. And sometimes it takes victims many years to voice their concern. Sometimes they have to wait for some kind of patriarch or matriarch of the family to pass away before they feel safe to come forward. It's never an easy thing. It's never an easy thing for a victim to make that first statement, and then the floodgates open up, and whoosh, there it comes. And she takes direct offense to him saying he's found peace, which I think was part of his, I think he knew that would probably tick her off. So I see a little bit of banter back and forth in these as well. The AWP support team, I guess Mr. LEISEK made a statement on the AWP support team page that he puts his age as 12 years old. During the transgressions, we will have to wait for the courts. I think the indictment put it at 9 and 16 and 10 and 17. But we will have to wait for the court proceedings and for questioning and discovery to see just what other evidence they have, and just pinpoint that down to make sure that we have the ages correct. Now, since he's a juvenile, there's many ways the court could go on this. They could apply grace because he potentially has a background and was also a victim and was basically replaying and mimicking learned behaviors. And it potentially is a generational issue. They may be more investigations that have to occur to backtrack through the family to find other people that are potentially guilty of other things. This could end up being a whole mess, and this family could end up like wide open and bare for everybody to see. And that's going to be difficult for everyone. And it's also, I mean, and for the people out there to think, well, that's what's going to happen for the victims to find peace. The investigation, the findings, the court proceeding, none of that is peaceful for a victim. What's peaceful for a victim is once they get that judgment order that says, yes, what this person did to me was wrong. And then they kind of, instead of that thing being always this object on the crest of the hill, they get to crest the hill and it goes behind them in life and they get to heal. So that's kind of what it does. But this is going to hurt everybody. It's going to be bad for everybody. Victims that are feeling empowered included. This is going to be difficult. So, don't trick yourself. It's going to be bad. Can we get rid of the my haunt photo here, dude? That's so tacky. In this discussion, that's so tacky. That is so tacky, YouTube. That is so tacky to want to condemn half the people trying to have an adult conversation about this scenario, but then allow little bots like I could rant for years on that, but money. Okay, so this is going to be a big mess for everybody, and there's going to be a whole lot more pain before anybody gets any sense of peace. And I don't look forward to the family having to go through this. I don't look forward to the victim having to go through with this. I mean, it's going to be hard on everybody. And I don't look forward to any life that this is going to touch. It's going to be a mess. And I feel for everyone that is affected because, number one, obviously something occurred in this familial relationship that was inappropriate that then trying to find the right word. It basically pre-condemned their children to repeat the transgression. Because children, nature versus nurture is real, but when you look into epigenetics and you look into basically the gene pronouncement and you have those triggers in your daily life, you are basically setting that child up for failure. So basically this parent's actions solidified the children's behavior from a very young age. So whether they knew it or not, they were just creating another generation of potential aggressors. And this is the way it goes in generational issues. So if what he's stating in these emails is true, and if it is a huge family issue and parents and grandparents knew about it, then it is a generational issue, then this could go back quite a ways and be a very deeply ingrained behavior that these children were not truly taught correctly about. Boundaries were obviously non-existent, and power was asserted in very inappropriate ways. So children learn by mimicking and imitating, and it just the natural progression occurs. So I can apply a little bit of grace for that, but then at the age that he was at, there was enough knowledge and enough common sense and enough understanding to know that this was wrong. So I'm anxious to see how the court views this and how the prosecuting attorney chooses to prosecute this. And I'm anxious to see what the defense attorney pops up with to try to defend this. Because, and I'm going to end with the thing that Music said, while he does allude to a lot of behaviors in these emails, he does fail to say one very important word, and it starts with an R. He doesn't say it himself. He alludes to a lot of things, a lot of physical things, a lot of inappropriate things, but he leaves a very big open-ended kind of question to people. And so a prosecuting attorney is going to look at this and go, okay, I've got him stating this, this, and this, but they're going to have to nail him during questioning and cross-examination to make him clarify these statements, because these are very open-ended, and while they allude to certain things, they don't allude to actually what the charges are. So they're going to have to make the connection in court, because he did not say those words in the email. So as much as he did tell on himself, he still did not cross that line and say certain words. Now, did he muddy the water and kind of put himself in a pickle? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, because this is not very well written. It's constructed very arrogantly and erroneously. But they also knew how to avoid saying certain things. So those certain things are going to have to be brought out in court. So I'm anxious to see the court proceedings. So that's kind of where I am on this. Now, I'm not going to, I'm not a member of AWP anymore. I haven't been after the Rodney case. I kind of got irritated the way they handled it and just was like, peace out, done. So, because if they had more information on that girl's case, they should have just laid it bare. And I was just frustrated, and I just kind of was like, peace out, I'm done. So, I'm not privy to their page anymore. I don't know if they've made any members only post or not. So I can't tell you if they've made any specific announcements. But I can tell you that I'm not going to not watch their videos, because I still think that the hardworking men that are doing great things for families deserve to have the ability to do so. I will say that I don't think that Mr. LEISEK should be anywhere near these grieving families or traveling anywhere out of his county of residence until after the court proceedings and after everything is settled, which I'm pretty sure that they will probably kind of put him on some kind of pre-trial supervision somehow, I would say. I'd be surprised if they didn't. But I don't think he needs to be affiliated with AWP right now while this is going on. I think he needs to space himself and allow these guys that do not have a tarnished profiles to continue the business until he gets himself squared away. So I don't know how this is going to end. We still, we have this indictment and these charges and a victim statement, but we still don't know if this is, true. We still has to go through court. We still have to wait for the findings. We have to still see if everything that we think is going on is actually going on. And we're going to have 5,000 different ways to look at this. And you're going to hear so many different perspectives and so many different ideas. Be sure that what you try to do is always go back and scale back to just what you have from the courts, what you have from statements from the individuals, or what you have as statements from law enforcement. Because if you get hyped up into the emotions, then you start to kind of find a bias, and you'll kind of accept certain things because you think that's the way it's going to go. And before you know it, your perception is skewed. And that's why I did what I did yesterday when I said, don't make a decision right now. Just wait till you hear what I have to say, because, I knew that some of you are going to be, oh, how dare her, because I wanted you to understand that that was an emotional bias. And if you did that yesterday when I was like, don't cast judgment yet, wait till we all discuss this. If you did that, then you do have an emotional bias. And while it's not necessarily a bad thing, it can be a very confusing thing, especially during these very emotional stories. Hi, Denise. It's okay. Thank you. I thought it was so tacky for them to show up, especially on this stream. It's just so tacky. Now, I'm sure that I missed saying certain things I needed to say, wanted to say, and I'm sure I could have said some things better, but I hope I said enough to kind of give you all a more well-rounded view of this. And to understand that your emotions are going to be played for the next little bit, and that these things hurt us intrinsically anyway, just because of how deplorable these behaviors and actions are. So you're going to feel bad. Don't allow someone then to take advantage of that emotional state. So be very careful who you follow, who you listen to, who you accept information from, and how amped up you get. Do not get overwhelmed with this. Do not get in a hyperventilating state. Take a step back, take a day off, and don't get into comment wars with people, because the truth is still not out there yet. We have to wait for the court proceedings, and then we'll probably learn way more than we want to know, just to be quite honest. We'll probably be soaking up in stuff we just never wanted to even envision. So just be very careful. Also, it's very important to say that it is also a big deal to remember that while these things did occur, both that were involved were in a juvenile status. Now, the court may choose to say, nope, we're going to try him as an adult. That is for the court to decide. So at this time, these events both involve juveniles. So you have to be super careful just how far you'll go talking about this, and just how far you'll go making leaps of judgment and emotional statements. You have to be careful. You have to understand that these are, this was not a 46-year-old man that just did this. This was, and there are extenuating circumstances. There's probably generational abuse. There's other adults that should have stepped in. And, what's sad for me to think is that if the first child to ever be victimized had just been brave enough to say, hey, to somebody, it could have saved this entire family from this entire issue. But we don't know the dynamic that first child was placed in. And so that's always been a catch-22 for me as someone that has dealt with these offenders and supervised these offenders and been in the courts and had to go through all this, is I always feel like, if someone had just been brave enough to open their mouth at the beginning, it would have saved a whole family tree of destruction. But then at the same time, how can you put that weight upon a child that is so innocent and stupefied by what's happening to them that they don't understand it? So we also have to say, and by the way, that most likely happened to Mr. LEISEK as well. And while it was horrendous and abhorrent of him to continue it, I can understand that as a child he didn't know what was going on, and to mimic and repeat those learned behaviors was probably something that was very normalized if mom, grandparents, aunts, uncles knew, per his email. So you just have to kind of look at it from different places. And everyone is going to have a very hyper emotional journey and story to share. And they're really, the only real thing that you need to focus on is that physical violence of any kind, especially this type of violence, can never be justified. It is never appropriate. And anyone that victimizes someone should always be held accountable. That's it. And so that's kind of where we can all agree. As for that, people are going to have various emotions. You can be mad at somebody and still feel sorry for what they had to go through. Don't be upset when people have catch-22 or kiss your butt curves in their emotional dialogues. It's difficult. It's difficult. Thanks for popping in. And if you need to pop out, I understand. But it's difficult. And people are going to have different ways to view this through different eyes, different age gaps, different lenses of life. And they're going to see it in lots of different ways. So don't get mad at people because they don't see it your way. Everyone's different experience is going to kind of mask how they pull in that information and absorb it. So don't get mad at people, because almost every feeling you have about this can validly be explored. So don't get mad at people when they're discussing this. And please be careful about who you support during this time, because I'm here to tell you the victims, as brave and as bolden and as happy as I am that they're now brave and emboldened, as brave and emboldened as they are currently, they don't need to be on YouTube or on podcasts. They need to be quietly working with their mental health professionals and their legal team to work on the case. Because they're going to be super emotional right now, and they're going to be like spigots of just, it's just going to be regurgitated and spit out of them everything they wanted to say for all these years. It's going to be very easy for them to say something, or for someone to ask something in the wrong manner and words to get twisted or statements to get misrepresented to where it could screw up a court case. So try to not support anyone that is going after the victims and really trying to do a deep dive and get a full story. We don't need that. That's for the courts. Right now, the victims need and we don't need to give the defense attorney any more edge than he's got. They need to be working with their mental health team and their legal team to handle this via court. They don't need to be on podcast and the internet. And it's very difficult for them now to kind of gauge what's right and what's wrong, because they just want to tell everybody, because now, by God, I can. And I understand that, but I really hope that they get reined in a little bit, because there are appropriate people to talk to right now and inappropriate people. And because I want to see their cases go as great as possible for them, with the least emotional disturbance and the least possibility for the defense attorney to get a one-up in some way. I don't want them to go online and shoot themselves in the foot and, you know, screw something up. So that's why I say that. It's very dangerous. The more you say, the more your words can be used against you. So for me, it's very important that they hold their words for their mental health team and their legal team. But yeah, this is going to be a big discussion because this is going to touch a lot of people, and it's the imbalance that people can't make sense of. It's because someone that we have seen do such good things could also do such bad things. That's every person in this world. I mean, I know everybody in this world is very familiar with that little black spot in your heart. We all have it. That one that gives us the little horrible thoughts when we're in traffic jams and road rage. And, you know, we all have it. We all have a tendency to go dark. We all have the capability. Some people just do not have the cutoff valve that other people have, and they don't work to form that. But we all have a capability of doing some pretty horrendous things. And there are places and behaviors and actions and encounters in life that aren't black and white. They're so gray. They're so gray. Like, a lot of people are going to see this as a black and white, but if they then change their perception to start looking at it from a generational component and realize that most likely Mr. LEISEK was potentially also a victim at some time, well, then they're going to have to apply the same grace they're applying to the victim today to him as a victim as well. But what? It feels bad to give him grace knowing that he is also an abuser. And that's start getting in the gray fuzzy area where, wait, my emotions. And that's why I say it's you learn a lot about yourself when you look into this, but you also learn that you can be pulled very easily. So if you're one that's pulled very easily, back away from the keyboard. So yeah, there's a lot of shock and awe, Barbie, that's being used with this, and I don't agree with that at all, because it's hard enough for victims to talk about this and to want to come out and talk to law enforcement, and then have the verbiage and the vernacular used across the web and in newspapers and you know, and that's almost as that it's really hurtful for them because they know that they're using certain words for shock and awe and to get clicks and likes and to pull people in to read the rest of the story. And they could have said it in such a much nicer, kinder, amicable way, you know. And so I don't like to see people that use those words. Now, I'm not for one that's like, trigger warning. No, I think if you've lived through something, then you should, if you're not able to talk about it, you're not able to deal with it, you need to go through some immersion therapy. You need to become able to talk about that, deal with it, and say the words. Because until then, you're going to be in a prison all around you because everybody talks. You know, so I always wanted people to, you know, get your power. Don't let the words own you, own the words. And so I'm one of those, I was one of those counselors who was very much find your power. Let's find your power, you know. And we talked about the words, and we go back to Latin roots, and I'd be like, okay, so when did this take on this meaning? When did this take on this perception? When did this denotation turn into this connotation? Do you understand now this is just a fluid form of verbal manifestation of an act? The act is the bad thing. Don't run from the word, run from the act. And so it was very hard to make people understand that. But several had an aha moment, and they said, I can go to the grocery store now. I can look at magazine titles. I don't feel like everywhere I go, I'm playing whack-a-mole with these words and these feelings. And I thought, awesome. That's what we wanted. We wanted you to be able to be out, be productive, and not feel like you're a victim at all times. So it ticks me off that people automatically go for the shock and awe campaign, because that's tacky as heck. It's just tacky as heck. Yeah, and Barbie, it gets us all sometimes. I mean, we're emotional creatures. We're herd animals, and we go to each other for solace. There is no one here. And if there is, don't knock on the door. So you just need to chill. But we're herd animals. We go to each other for solace. And so we seek each other out when things alert us. But the bad thing is that human beings have gotten so toxic that we seek each other out not for safety and alert when we're alerted, but to make it worse and talk about how bad it is. And it make, you know, it's like chewing gum. We just chew and chew and chew, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we now circle the wagons for all the wrong reasons. It's to me, it's like, why do we do this? Why, you know, no one's talking about rational, calm down, look at it from here, look at it from here, you know. And the thing is, for every person that's involved in this, there are probably about 500 different ways to look at it. And so there's a lot of arguments that can be made. There's a lot of, you know, fictitious justifications that can be thrown up. And, you know, and there's just so many ways to look at it per every individual that no one's going to have the right perspective. You know, even the court, as unbiased as they try to be, is biased, because they created a rule of law against this act. So they're already biased, you know, but we deemed as a nation that that act was wrong. But you have to understand that, you know, you can't get away from bias. You can't get away. Even like I had a state trainer say, well, today we're teaching an anti-bias class. I said, so you're teaching us a bias? No, I'm teaching you an anti-bias. I said, but an anti-bias is a bias against bias. Therefore, it's a bias. You're teaching us a bias. And she goes, and I like imploded her brain. I didn't mean to, but I completely imploded her brain. And I was like, how can you think that an anti-bias is not just another bias? I was like, and so I sat in training like this, like, oh, Lord, you know, because I learned nothing that day other than they paid this very, very sweet woman to do a job that can't be done. So, Oscar, chill out. If somebody's here, I'll take care of it. Go sit down. Go. Go. Nate, go. Don't you do it. Sorry, I had to be alpha for a minute. It's next door. Somebody's driving up next door, and they've got that loud sound system playing, and he doesn't know who it is. So as you deal with all of this for the next few days, do check-ins with yourself to make sure that you need to watch that video. You need to accept that viewpoint. You need to learn a new perspective. You should hear this information. You want to know what's going on there, you know, and don't get too far ahead of the legal paperwork and the law enforcement paperwork and the factual evidence. So that's what I would tell you about this. It's going to be a sticky situation, and people are going to hate me for saying this, but I hope the victim gets the justice she needs to start her healing. I know that she will never be shed of this, but I hope that she gets the justice she needs to start her healing journey and become a much more empowered person, and someone who can take some control back in her world and feel that the world is not a place where she is a victim anymore, that she has some power. I hope that if this is all true, that Mr. LEISEK finally does sit down and have a real soul-searching moment and understands that, yes, he was victimized, and yes, we all, you know, have the same compassion for his victimization and his abuse, but we also have to say, we stop when you then become the aggressor. That's when we go, oh, compassion dried up. But I hope that he gets some answers to his own behavior, get some answers to why life has held some of the uneven roller coaster moments that it's had for him, so that he kind of makes peace with kind of what he has justified and done in his world. And I think maybe he's trying to kind of like become a new person, but I think old habits are hard to break, and learned behaviors become training, and training becomes ingrained. It's very difficult. So, but I hope everybody ends up in a healthier mindset with a healthier view about this, and that the families are stopped from perpetuating this cycle to a new generation. And my deepest wish is that in the 36 years that it took for this to come to light, that no other children have been victimized. But I'm afraid that as we learn the depths of this discovery, we will throw a rock and never hear it hit bottom. That's my I've seen cases like this, and once we take the first layer off, it never seems to end. So that's my concern. But I certainly don't have malice toward anyone. He just needs to be held accountable for his behavior. It was wrong. There is no justification for that behavior. It is the most abhorrent behavior I think anyone can do to anyone else. And my malice would not make it right, stop it, bring anybody any justice or peace. So why would I sit here and have malice? I will sit here and try to learn from it so that I might catch someone exhibiting certain traits or behaviors that I might be able to help, or I would educate myself to be aware so that I can have conversations with my children. I have grown children now, but my children when they're appropriate age, to teach them more about the world around them and what they may run into and how to kind of feel people out. I kind of trained both my kids because since I supervise sex offenders, I had to make both of my children aware of what type of people I supervised. So we had passwords for pickup. They knew if I did certain behaviors, if we were somewhere as a family, and I did certain behaviors, then they knew that they were to split, double back, and meet me somewhere else because they needed to not be seen with me because I didn't want certain people to know I had children. We had safeties for almost everything. And so my children learned about this early because I had to put them in that world to keep them safe. And boy, that was hard for me to find the balance. That was very hard as a mother, very hard. It was great for my young son to see because he got to, he knew that I was supervising some young men that had got snookered into some stuff, but he also saw some really vicious people. And so he was very aware that the world was not always a safe place. And it was great for my daughter to learn that as well. I remember one time my daughter, we always did check-ins. Even when they were older teenagers, when we went to store together, if we split, we had to do check-ins. So they knew that I was going to be in a central location in the store. And if they wanted to go to another department, they had to come back and do a check-in. Well, my daughter was coming back during the check-in and she was giving me those eyes. And she was walking with her head up. She was giving me those eyes. And she said, "Creeper, 12 o'clock, And there was this man following her. And I just stepped, and when she stepped past me, I stepped in between them. And of course, I'm inked up and mean and big and burly. And I said, "Yeah, it's my daughter. She's cute, ain't she? Do you want to tell me how cute you think she is, or do I just need to call law enforcement now?" He split. Guess who showed up in court about 3 months later and turned white when he saw me sitting in the state box? Oh, let me tell you, that was funny. And I had to stick my fingers up, signal the judge, and tell him I had an encounter with this man in Walmart. It was inappropriate, and I need to be recused from any supervision because I obviously don't need to supervise this man. But my daughter was prepared to identify his behavior as predatory. And we don't teach little girls that. We teach little girls how to be bait and don't understand it. Women, I mean, it's okay to be pretty and it's okay to doll yourself up and it's, but don't be bait. Don't think that if you can't go out into public unless you look like you can catch a man, because you'll catch more than a man. You'll catch something turpentine and Ajax won't take off. Don't be bait. So there's a lot of different talks we can have about this. And I had to have all those talks with my daughter at a very young age because I supervise these people. And so she was mad at me because I wouldn't let her wear makeup early. I wouldn't let her wear tight jeans like the other girls. She had to be 18 before she could make a lot of clothing decisions on her own. If you've seen one of my previous videos from the very first start of my channel, it's Shit Hillbilly Mamas Say. That was one of my best videos. And then there's another one about mothers having talks, having Katie Noel talks with their daughters. And, behavior, how you present yourself, and being aware in public are 3 very important things if you're a female in this world. Very important things. And so I still have check-ins with my daughter. And I still, even though she's got a fiance that protects her and I'm sure would jump into action, I'm still a mom and I still send check-ins. So if I see games being played or like stuff in the handles of the cars to transfer a substance, I send her these things. And she's like, I know, mom. And when she was in college, she would send me all the college campus news so I knew what was going on campus. So we kind of kept in touch, and we kind of, she's mean. Now I raised her. I taught her about pressure points and how to crush an esophagus and send you nasal cartilage straight into your brain. So I made her mean. But I prepared her in a well-rounded way for the world. And part of me, though, when I had this job, really hated to bring in certain topics, but I had to. Now, as I'm looking at her as a young woman navigating this world, she navigates it so much more effectively and efficiently than most young women her age. And I'm like, okay, that wasn't a bad decision. Even though I thought that the subject matter might be too hard, it wasn't a bad decision. And she has thanked me several times for that. Her girlfriends in college always called her the mom of the group because they went out. She knew where every fire exit was. She had 3 outs, and they knew how many were in their group, and they wore solid colors that matched. They could see each other. My daughter's smart, and she's also very good at radar on a crowd to see, any kind of predation that's going on, predatory behavior. She could spot that in an instant. So I think that, the moms of the roommates of my daughter in college, you're welcome. Was she a killjoy at times? Absolutely, but it was probably necessary. So, but honestly, there are so many ways to look at this that I probably could do a whole video talking about his victimization and the grace concession we should be giving on him. And it would be appropriate, necessary, truthful, but it certainly would piss a lot of people off. But, because they want to focus on just one victimization. And you have to step back and it's like an onion. You have to peel the layers, and we're all going to end up crying, and we won't want to do it again, but sadly it'll happen again. So this is just going to be a painful process. So don't jump on anyone that sees differently or has a different viewpoint. There are 5 gazillion to have. And there's really no right or wrong way to look at this, except there's no way to justify his behavior, and he does need to be held accountable. So that's kind of where I'm going to end. I hope I kind of enlightened y'all. And if anybody wants to know what happens to these people after they serve part of their sentence and they come out, about 60 to 90 days before their release date, a institutional parole officer will meet with them and get 3 addresses and employment options and family contacts for residences upon release. That will go to the officer that supervises those offenders in that area. They're normally called PSU units. They will investigate those. They get 3 chances. They will investigate those 3 residences. If one of those 3 residents falls within the sex offender guidelines, then they may live there and they may be released to there. If one of those 3 residents does not, 3 strikes are out. You have to wait till your next parole option. Then you get 3 more attempts. If they are released, then normally if it's a heinous crime or the victim is under 13 years of age, the new parole officer will actually travel to the facility, or the institutional parole officer will place on that person for the receiving parole officer a GPS ankle monitor and initiate the process so that they can be tracked. That person must check in with their officer within, I think, 12 hours of release, and there has to be a home visit done within 24 hours to set up everything else, and you have to go over all the rules. They have to sign everything, and then they have to come in and do a whole big intake, sign a whole bunch more stuff, new pictures, document all the tattoos. It's a whole process. Then they have to be set up for annual lie detector test, sex offender therapy classes, individual counseling if ordered, and any restitution or special conditions set up by the parole board. So it's a big life change, and it's a big job, and it will consume the majority of their life. And for community supervision of life, there's really no way to get off the registry. The only way to get off the registry, unless you have some kind of suspended sentence or diversion, is you have to do 15 years with no issues and then request, and you have to go back before the court. But I have never seen it granted. Well, I might have seen it once. I think it was a medical issue, but I've never really seen it just granted. So most people that end up on the registry are on the registry for life. It's just the way it is. And then after they're not being supervised by an officer that works for the Department of Corrections, after they finish their supervision, but they're still community supervision for life, then they have to register with the Sheriff's Department, and they have to register any address change, vehicle change, all of that stuff immediately. and they can't travel. They have to notify police and other counties if they travel to other counties and have to check in. They can't have any holiday decor in the yard. They can't do anything to lure children in. I always had to do the Halloween home visit, so I never got to have Halloween with my children. It was so frustrating. I think I got one Halloween with my kids the entire time that they were little. So it was frustrating, but it had to be done. So while David was taking the kids trick-or-treating around the square in town, I was going and knocking on doors of all the sex offenders in my county, making sure that they were home, lights were out, and there was no holiday decor, and they were in no way handing out candy or had anyone inappropriate at their home. It was a job. A lot of miles to travel in one county that's rural for sex offenders. Sadly, the population is thickening. I will also say that not everyone registered as a sex offender has committed a crime. A lot of people, like I said yesterday in my video, a lot of people, when they're have charges placed against them that may be unfounded, they get put in jail and they're being held for trial. They can't wait 10 months to 2 years for a trial. So their attorney will very horribly tell them, well, why don't you just take a plea deal so you can get back out and get to work? I mean, you'll just be on supervision for a few years. Attorneys tell the truth. If you plea to a sex offense and you become a registered sex offender, you have to do all those things I just said. So even though your supervision may just be 2, 3, 6 years, you're going to be on the sex offender registry for your entire life. And you're always going to have to register. Traveling for work it's a crapshoot. And you're still going to have all these limits. But had they known that, they probably wouldn't have took the plea. They would have stayed in jail to go to trial and try to win the case. I saw so many young entrepreneurs that could not stay in because they had young families, homes, businesses, employees, and they would take the plea to get out thinking, oh, life's going to go back to normal. I'm just going to have to deal with this for a couple of years. And I would have to be the one to tell them, no, sorry, you can't travel unless the judge said you can. And then you have to check in with the police in other cities to verify that you were there. I have to follow you on GPS. You have to attend these 2 therapy sessions every week at this fixated spot, not anywhere else. And you also have to do individual counseling. I'm also going to need you here for a lie detector test. And you're also going to have to do reporting every 2 weeks. And I'm going to have to see you at home at least once a month. And they were like, well, what? And then they always said, I should have took it to trial because I would have been found not guilty. Yes, they should have took it to trial. But sadly, our justice system is not, even though you're supposed to be guaranteed a speedy trial, no. Especially when you have a judge that sits on 6 to 8 counties and has a rotation that he's only in each county every 6 to 8 weeks. So sometimes you may go through 60 to 100 true bills or indictments in a court date because it's been 6 to 8 weeks since he's been there. So it's not always set up the most efficiently, and it's not always set up as what would seem the ideal scenario. And there are people that are convicted that probably, if they took a trial, would have been completely vindicated. And it's sad to say that. So that's when everybody curls their lips at sex offenders. I'm like, okay, you really need to look at the whole individualized information. You really need to go and say, hey, I want any information that I need, copies of this. If you have to redact certain information, I understand, but I want to know. And you can go on your local state's Bureau of Investigation sex offender registry and go county by county, and you will see where they live. It's public information, so you can make yourself aware and know who's around you and know how to stay safe. Know when you should have your cackles up in what areas. So it's all about information and the appropriate information, and not kind of falling into the gossip line. Because, a lot of people, all these charges lumped together. Like I said, there could be an 80-year-old man who's driven the same 7-mile road to get home, never seen a car. His bladder's not going to make it to his house because he's 80 years old. He thinks, screw it, I've never seen a car on this road. I'm going to step up and pee in the ditch line. And then at that moment, a woman rounds the curve with 5 kids in the car, and they catch a glimpse, and boom, now he's charged with a sex offense, probably going to be convicted, and all for his bladder not wanting to make it home and him being 80 and needing to take a pee in the ditch line. So there's a lot of these cases that have extenuating circumstances. And lots of times, sad to say, when those little cases pop up, it depends on how busy the DA's office is and what mood the judge is in. I mean, it's sad. There's a lot of filters that stack to make our justice system, and not all of them are, the pearlescent ivory towers we think them to be. It's sad, but those things do happen. I've witnessed a 16 or 17-year-old girl that had, in a year and a half, had 7 males charged with sex offenses. And I had been moved to that county. So I came in on the last one that was charged, and I started getting all the paperwork together because I was going to be getting this person on my caseload, and I was going back, and I thought victim. Well, when I did a search in the computer, her name was in there more than once. And I thought, why is this victim in all these cases? Pulled all the cases. She had charged all these men and had relationships and even had children with like 20, 30-year older men. And I went into the judge's office and put all the files in front of his face. And I said, why has the parents not been charged with neglect yet? Because this child should have been at home. And if she was out of the house long enough to have facilitate these relationships and have these children and be pregnant multiple times, parents should have taken action. So how come I'm seeing her pop up in the computer 6 times, but no one else is being punished for this? No one else is being investigated for this? Because obviously this child was not monitored. And I never got a straight answer from anyone. So I'm assuming money was in there somewhere. So yeah, I've hung up on the governor when he called me because he wanted clemencies for somebody. I said, that's not appropriate. He's not been on supervision long enough. I can't give that. If I sign that paperwork or fill out that paperwork, it's inappropriate. It's illegal and I could lose my job. Oh, no. I'm telling you to do it. Well, who are you, Jesus? Tennessee state law is Tennessee state law. Click. I got yelled at by my manager because I hung up on the governor. I said, well, I'm going to hang up on anybody that's asking me to do anything illegal. Sorry. And so I didn't make a lot of friends, but, they knew that I was a rudder that would not be moved. And, I did not appreciate that. And I let them know I didn't. And then when the offender came in, I said, I don't know what strings you're pulling, but you can stop. So, and to date, that offender still says hello to me when they see me in town. They didn't take it personal. They just knew I wasn't going to let it slide. So, you experience a lot of things when you work in that world. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, and some of them just leave you perplexed. And I have a feeling that this case is going to be one of the latter. So if you're feeling super emotional, back away. And if something hits that you truly are confounded by or confused about or need answers for, put a comment below after this video loads. So take it a couple days. And if I have the capacity and the energy to explore it and explain it from a court and supervision standpoint, I will. I always, I don't care to kind of tell you the inside knowledge that a lot of you don't understand. Because when I have viewpoints, a lot of people go, I don't understand why she's thinking that way. It's because I've sat in courtrooms and I've prosecuted offenders on warrants, and I've been cross-examined by horrible, horrible attorneys. And I've had to play the game, and I understand all the tricks, but I also understand what's actually going to happen and what they're actually looking for, and what is actually going to stick and what's going to fall away. And so while I think Mr. LEISEK thinks that those emails were well constructed, they're not. They're not. They're more of an admission of guilt than any kind of ambivalent, let me give you some peace. They're more of an admission to guilt than that. I don't think he understands that, which makes me think that he's not as changed as I would want him to be 30 years after this event. But that's me, and I'm picky, and I think people should grow. So I'm biased there. That's my bias coming out. So just be careful. Don't get super emotional. Don't let people drag you by the nose emotionally into things. Don't have Twitter wars and comment wars with people over someone else's issue that shouldn't affect your world, your life, upset you, affect your blood pressure, give you headaches. Just don't. Remember my rule. You care most about those who you wipe their butt. So when somebody's really making you mad, ask yourself, would I wipe their butt? Because if you would give somebody enough energy to emotionally pull you around for 24 hours or a couple of days on the internet, you might as well just grab toilet paper and wipe their hind end. Because they have really run you through it. So ask yourself, would I wipe their butt? And if the answer is no, do not engage. Because what they're going to try to make you do, they're going to drag you through their crap. So don't do it. Always say, I wipe my own butt first. I'm a priority. Everyone else needs to get in line. And I just kind of view everybody like that. And normally when people come at me and they try to be an aggressor or a predator, I think it's cute. Because I'm like, oh, he squared up to me. He flexed his muscles. He popped his forehead vein. Oh, he's giving me all the mojo, and I think it's extremely cute. Women don't do that. Now, I'm a big burly woman. Women don't do that. But I read people so efficiently for my job. And so I can navigate some places that most other women can't because of my work history and things that I've learned and in the negotiation and dialogue skills and de-escalation techniques that I've learned. So don't everybody do that. But, just silently think to yourself, okay, they want to be an aggressor. They want to pull me through their crap. And am I going to let them? Because it's up to you whether you respond and how far they drag you. And to be quite honest, if you get into a comment battle and then halfway through you go, I give up, that's basically having a calf run away with you on leash. And the first time you let go of that rope and it gets free, it knows it can do it every time. So they'll be back. They'll be back to drag you again. So it's just better to never grab on anybody's rope and let them drag you, because that's a power play. So I normally do not engage. And that's why when Carlin Porsenko tried to be such a turd to me the other day, I was like, even keel. And I wanted her, if she went back and read those, to see that it was a very voice of reason, no emotion, but a very discerning eye. Because I think she needs to have a more discerning eye on her behavior. Again, my opinion. So, but everybody be super careful. This is going to get sticky. And don't send hate to anybody. That's not your job. Unless you wear a robe and went to school for a gazillion years and have a little gavel that's engraved with your name on it that says honorable before it, do not go issuing judgment across the internet. Chill out and wait for the court proceedings to happen and understand that we're all humans. We're all flawed. There are huge imperfections in the human race. This is one of the darkest and the ugliest, and we need to be educated about it, but we don't need to be reactive about it. Never good. So it's that emotional place that causes a lot of harm for people. When you get in your emotions, you always make the wrong decision. So everybody, be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Be gracious to each other. And if you are frustrated with someone, leave of absence or space helps greatly. So if you find yourself being super emotional the next few days, pop out, take a day, stay away from it, and then see if you need to come back to it or not. Because guarantee this is going to get sticky. So everybody, that's all I have to tell you. If you have certain questions when this loads later, put them in the comment section below. I will check back and I will try to follow this along. And if I think there's something super important that you need to know, I'll tell you. But I'm not going to beat a dead horse and do like all these people and do like 50,000 videos when it's literally been an ant's breadth of progression. There's no point in that. I'm not going to lead you emotionally like that. If something big happens, I'll make a video. If you don't hear from me, there's not been enough change to worry about. So y'all have a good night. Be good to each other. Go to bed in a positive mood. Wake up and be happy for 3 things. And I'll see you tomorrow, and we will craft. I actually did some stuff while I was sitting here, but we'll craft tomorrow and get back in a happy place. Night, guys.